welcome back to the deep dive. So, you've put in the work, you've mastered the grammar of music, your key signatures, triads, all that basic harmony.
All the fundamentals.
Exactly. But today, we are going deep into the advanced mechanics. We're looking at what it really takes for mastery, specifically how composers pull off those huge structural movements.
And also how they use these tiny, tiny details to create, real emotional intensity.
Right. The big picture and the small picture.
Our mission today is to sort of synthesize the macro and the micro. On one hand, you have the huge structural drama of modulation. It's a complete overhaul of the musical landscape.
Like a total change of scenery.
And on the other hand, you have the note-by-note stuff, the expressive elements.
Yeah.
Things like the timing of an anticipation or the tension of an Appoggiatura.
And you can't really understand advanced theory without grasping both at the same time.
You really can.
Okay, so let's start with that grand gesture. If you're a composer and you're writing a major work, the most dramatic way to shift the emotional weight, the color of your piece, is to just change keys entirely.
Change the gravitational center. That's modulation.
Let's define that. What is it, really?
Modulation, to put it simply, is when the composer commits to a new key. It's a key change within a piece that, and this is important, leaves the original key and then stays in the new key for a reasonable amount of time.
So it's not just a momentary change of chord color.
No, not at all. It's like you're establishing a new tonal home you've moved in.
And what's crucial for any advanced theorist to understand is that back in the common practice era, Baroque, classical, early Romantic, this wasn't some random leap into the dark.
No, it was very structured. And because of that, predictable.
So if you start in C major, where are you most likely going?
You're almost certainly heading to one of two main destinations. The dominant key, which is the V, or the relative major or minor key.
Okay, so C major would go to G major, the dominant.
Or to A minor, it's relative minor. Yeah. These are what we call closely related keys,
Sure.
which makes the shift feel smooth and, well, logical to the listener's ear.
I love that idea of predictability because that's what sets up the tension. When you listen to a piece like, say, Schumann's Song of War, it starts in D major.
Right.
And then it uses this very controlled harmonic movement to land in F sharp major. That shift feels momentous.
It's dramatic because you know the normal path, and the composer is gently leading you just a little bit off the main road.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really great observation. The drama you feel relies on the listener recognizing that the key relationship is related but still kind of unexpected. But here's the intellectual nugget that separates the student from the master.
Oh.
Not everyone even agrees that true modulation exists.
Okay, here we go. This is where it gets really interesting. We have these 20th century masters, people like Schoenberg and most notably Heinrich Schenker, who looked back at centuries of music and basically said, nope, you're not actually modulating.
Exactly. Schenkerian analysis is built on this idea of the ersatz, the fundamental structure. And in that view, any modulation you think you hear is just an extended cadence.
An extended cadence? What does that mean?
It means you're just prolonging the harmony away from the main tonic. You might use chords that suggest a temporary key, but you never fundamentally abandon the overall structural tonic of the entire piece.
So the piece that starts in C major, structurally, it stays in C major, even if it spends 2 minutes pretending to be in G major.
Precisely. The goal is always the structural prolongation of the conic chord. The apparent key change is just a localized technique. It creates variety, it creates momentum, but it's all within that larger C major framework.
So it turns modulation from a change of location into what? A temporary journey away from home?
And an inevitable return.
Yes, that reframes the whole exercise. But for our purposes, and definitely within the classical framework, we still have to understand the mechanism of that journey.
Oh, absolutely.
And that mechanism relies completely on one concept, the pivot chord.
The pivot chord is the critical connection point. It's the main tool that makes that smooth journey possible. We define it as the chord that comes immediately before the key change and is common to both the original key and the new one.
I always think of it like a central train station that serves two different cities.
Uh-huh.
It's the last stop on the schedule for the old key, but it's also the first stop on the schedule for the new key. It has like dual citizenship.
That analogy is perfect.
Yeah.
And the mastery required here isn't just finding a chord common to both scales. That's the easy part. Closely related keys share a lot of chords.
So what's the hard part?
The analytical challenge, the core requirement for real understanding, is dual labeling.
Okay, explain why dual labeling is the step that separates a casual listener from an informed analyst.
Because it forces you to analyze the function of the chord, not just its notes. You have to label the pivot chord with Roman numerals from both the original key and the new key at the same time.
Which means you have to pull together everything you've learned before?
Everything. Your key signatures, your scale degrees, how Roman numerals show function tonic, dominant, and so on.
So we're not just finding a G major chord. We're assigning it two different jobs at once.
Exactly. Let's use the classic example.
Okay.
A modulation from C major to G major. We need a chord that exists naturally in both keys.
The C major triad itself would work, C, E, G.
Works perfectly. So in the original key, C major, what is the C major triad?
It's the I chord, the tonic, its home base.
Correct. But now we have to look at that same C major triad through the lens of the new key, G major. In G major, the scale is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. C is the fourth scale degree.
Right. So the C major triad now functions as the IV chord, the subdominant in G major.
There you go. So you would label that one pivot chord as I in the key of C, and right below it, IV in the key of G. That ability to hold two analytical perspectives at once, to see the same chord as both the engine and the caboose, that's the breakthrough.
It's analyzing the psychological shift for the listener. The composer uses a chord that felt like home, the I chord, and then subtly repurposes it to be the setup, the I chord, for the new home.
Yes. Once you master that dual functional analysis, you truly get how the macro structure shifts.
That makes perfect sense. The pivot chord is the fulcrum the whole piece can turn on.
Mm-hmm.
So once the composer has navigated that macro structure, they've picked their destination, they've used the pivot, now they can decorate the local moments in that new key.
We're moving from the grand structural shift to the expressive micro details.
Zooming all the way in.
Yep, all the way in. This is where the composer makes sure the melody isn't just notes, but emotion. We can start with anticipation.
Anticipation is a great word for it. It just sounds like forward motion.
It is. Anticipation is when you present a chord tone immediately before the actual chord hits.
So the note arrives early.
Arrives early, usually on a weak beat or an unaccented part of the measure. And it just prepares the listener for the harmony that's about to land on the strong beat. It creates a little hop, a little sense of, I know where we're going.
Okay. Then we get into the specific ornaments, the ones that add some real character. Let's talk about the Acciaccatura.
The Acciaccatura. It's often called the crushed note.
A crushed note.
Yeah, it's an ornament you hear a lot in keyboard music, especially late Baroque. It's a non-chord tone, a dissonant note, usually a step below the main note, that is played and then immediately released.
So it takes up almost no time.
Virtually no rhythmic space. It just gives a quick, sharp rhythmic edge to the main note, a little percussive spike.
A flash of dissonance that's gone instantly. But the final, and I think most harmonically significant micro detail, is the Appoggiatura.
Ah, yes. The Appoggiatura is way more dramatic than the others.
Why is that?
Because of its timing. Like the Acciaccatura, it's a non-harmonic tone. It often clashes with the chord underneath it, but its defining feature is that it's performed on the beat. It takes the accented position.
And then it resolves.
Then it resolves, usually stepwise, to a chord tone. It demands your attention. It forces you to lean in and feel the tension.
Which is what his name means, right? The leaning note.
That's it. And this is why it was formalized so strictly in the classical period. It carries so much emotional weight that composers and performers needed rules.
A rule book for how long you hold that tension before you resolve it.
Exactly. The classical period standardized its use with very clear guidelines.
Okay, we have to unpack that rule book because it's pretty detailed.
Yep.
What was the core, the foundational rule for the Appoggiatura's duration?
The primary guideline, the main rule, was that the Appoggiatura note is to be divided equally in duration with the main note it precedes. 50-50. If you have a half note that's supposed to be there, the Appoggiatura takes a quarter note, and the main note gets the remaining quarter note. It steals exactly half the time.
But as always in music theory, the exceptions prove the rule. There are 4 specific times when this equal division gets tossed out.
Right. And the Appoggiatura demands even more time.
What's the first one?
The first variation is about creating rhythmic imbalance for emotional effect. So if the Appoggiatura appears before a dotted note, a note that already feels heavy, it receives 2/3 of the total note value.
2/3, that's a huge delay.
And it creates this massive, weighty drag before the resolution, a huge sense of drama before the relief finally arrives.
Okay, what's exception number 2?
The second one deals with meter. If the Appoggiatura is used in compound meters like 68 or 98, it receives 1 full beat. It asserts its dominance over the underlying pulse of the music.
And the third exception, This one feels like just outright rhythmic theft.
It is. If the appoggiatura is followed by a note and then a rest, the appoggiatura gets the complete value of the following note.
So it basically eats the main note.
It consumes the main note's entire rhythmic space, leaving only the rest behind. It's a very deliberate way to maximize tension right before silence. A powerful tool.
Wow. Okay, and what about the final set of conditions, the catch-all?
The fourth category is basically a catch-all for when the notes are moving too fast for that strict division. So with faster notes, repeated notes, or syncopated notes, the appoggiaturas are played more quickly.
But they're still on the beat.
That's the critical rule. They are still performed on the beat. The principle of having that accented dissonance and resolution remains, even if the duration is really brief.
So if we look back at the scope of this deep dive,
Yeah.
we've gone from the analytical challenge of shifting an entire piece from one key to another using that functionally complex pivot chord.
All the way down to understanding why a single leaning note might demand 2/3 of beat instead of half.
That is the entire spectrum of advanced musical mechanics.
And that level of mastery understanding, the macro movement and the micro expressive timing, that's the advanced theorist's toolkit. When you master the smooth, subtle art of the classical pivot chord, moving between closely related keys,
You get the foundation to appreciate what comes next.
you really do. You could appreciate the later composers who deliberately sought to destabilize tonality.
Because once you know how to transition smoothly, the next logical step is to transition violently.
Or not at all, absolutely. The 20th and 21st century saw composers just completely rejecting the single key center. You see techniques like bitonality.
Two keys at the same time.
Right, where a composer might have D major in one hand and E major in the other, or even polytonality, with several keys clashing at once.
So you're hearing two radios playing different songs at the same time. It's a huge wall of tension that the classical masters would have hated.
And the chaos of that polytonal clash is only effective because the audience, having been conditioned by centuries of smooth pivot chords, understands exactly what is being rejected.
Right. The complexity and tension of multiple keys only registers if you understand the elegance of a single key.
It's all about context.
So the final takeaway for you is this. Listen not just for the melody, but for that harmonic foundation underneath. Can you hear where the composer is setting up the pivot chord? And when you hear a clash of keys in later music, ask yourself, is this true chaos? Or is it just the rejection of that smooth rulebook that came before it?
Now go listen for those dual-labeled shifts.